Good space time, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of the Citizen Web3 podcast, your source for educational insights into the Web3 universe and your connection hub to discovering those that contribute to building the decentralized world. Today, we are joined by Nimit from Girnaar Nodes. We discuss cloud credits, avoiding AWS, bare metal, and computing power into money. We talk about 2017 success, tech versus capital, and those that have it. Finally, we dive into infrastructure as capital, liquid staking, contributing to Web3, and the importance of research. If you enjoy our podcast, please share this episode on your favorite social platform and help us spread Web3 values into the universe.
But Web3 is not about marketing, it's about community. Yes, it does create centralization risk no matter how decentralized the protocol itself is. Web3 is work in progress. If you pull the brakes on it, then people don't trust you. Each blockchain has services beyond validation. You do that, things start falling in pace, you get in touch with more people, the wheels start spinning.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of the Citizen Web3 podcast. And today I have Nimit with me from the Girnaar validator. Girnaar. There we go. Was that the second one better time, Nimit? I'm sorry. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me on. It was bang on, mate. You got it right. It's Girnaar.
Thank you. As all of our listeners know already, the beginning is always the name's pronunciation, but I'm there. You know, as a person who traveled a lot, I have such a mixed accent that sometimes I get confused how to pronounce things correctly. So I'm sorry about that. Nimit, tell us all about yourself. How did you get to Web3, the story of Nimit? What's your background and what do you do these days in Web3?
Awesome. Hey everyone, thanks for listening in and thanks for having me on board, by the way. The story of us getting Web3 is actually quite funny. They call it the necessity is the mother of all invention. It pretty much is the story of Web3 and it's pretty much the story of us getting on Web3. So before I started on my journey in Web3, I've been a startup guy for quite some time. This is almost the fourth venture that I'm building. And back then, this was, I think, early 2017, we were building something in the Web2 space in the HR tech space. We had raised some seed capital. We are going quite well. But I think along the journey, every time as you go on a journey, you realize, right, at some point of time, you realize that you probably have to pivot because it's not going exactly where you want it to go. And I looked up that, okay, it's time to pivot. We really need to go somewhere else. But we didn't have the resources to do it. I looked at my bank balance. We had spent a lot of money building the product, trying to get it to market. We had some clients. I looked at my cap table. We had already diluted the seed round. So unless we proved traction with the next one, we couldn't take it to the next round. The only thing we interestingly had was a ton of cloud credits because we have been to Microsoft Ventures and all those kinds of fancy incubators, right? And you know how the Web2 incubators are. They shower you with credits so that they can get you hooked. And if you ask me now, I'll never build on AWS or Microsoft, but that's a separate story. It's all bare metal or nothing, right? It's all deep in or nothing now. But that's the only thing I had. And I was looking at a way of converting these cloud credits into money so that we could fund our pivot. And bingo bango comes along something as beautiful as Web3 or the blockchain, where you put in compute power and it turns into money. Who would have thought, right? Raw compute power. And we started spinning up Ethereum validators. Back then it was actually proof of work, so they were miners, they're not validators. And our math was actually built on Ethereum being close to early hundreds. Stroke of luck, 2017 bull market happened, and we were just hooked from that time.
I like hooked. Hooked is good. It's funny how the Web3, not funny, but I guess there is a little bit of irony inheriting that slang from Web 2, which is a strange slang, right? It uses the same words like hooked users, and we all know what other industries use those words. But of course it matches, but it's just ironic that Web 3 also inherited it, and we all kind of like into it. You mentioned Ethereum validators, and I know I think you guys validate on Lido Finance, right?
So Lido is one of the people who brings us stake. So Lido effectively is not a protocol, right? So we started with Lido on Polygon. We are now On Lido's test nets for is GVT program, which is by sticking it to the community. It's actually doing the right thing by decentralizing, because that's the biggest thing Lido was criticized for, right? It's 32, 37 validators at the back running 32% of the Ethereum stake, which actually is anti-central. Even Vitalik spoke about it. So Lido is going through a whole decentralization program to DVT. We are part of that, and we are quite excited to kind of be a part of, go through that journey. But for us, Lido's journey started on Polygon. We are one of the early guys who partnered with Lido on Polygon when they just started. Back then, it was like 3 or 5 validators. Now it is up to 12 validators on Polygon. But it's been a very strong partnership since then.
We had a moment of self-advertisement here for the listeners. If you guys want to learn more about Lido, check out a couple of the podcasts we did with Lido, and also with P2P, which are closely related some years ago with the founder of P2P. What's your opinion, Nimit, on that whole story with 32% being in okay, not in one hands, but let's say in the hands of one entity, and obviously a centralized entity, regardless of whether it's an entity on top of a blockchain or not. We all understand how structures work in this world. What's your opinion on not just not the fact itself that's one entity? I mean, that's how technically the market happened. But in your opinion, should networks interfere at this stages manually, even if it's a decentralized network? Because then you have this two and stick, right? What's your take on that?
I think the first thing, it says a lot about how good a protocol Lido was, because it just naturally gravitated to that state, right? It didn't force anyone. There was nothing going wrong in the way they did it. They did it the right way. They just happened to be one of the most successful guys, so success brought in some inherent challenges. But they're taking the right step now. Yes, it does create centralization risk, no matter how decentralized the protocol itself is. Um, there's nothing that's gone wrong so far. So there's one argument to be made that, uh, well, it is working right. But then they're getting ahead of the problem, and they're being proactive by bringing it through community staking. And the thing that I like about that is they're also doing it by not introducing artificial barriers like bonds, or even if they're bonds, they're going to be very low bonds. Uh, so they're going to get more powerful. It probably might eat up some bit of Rocket Pool share too, because you don't need these bonds. They're doing it the right way. They're using the SSP or ball, the new DVD technology to do it. It's just probably taking a little bit more time, but that's how decentralized structures are, right? You need to check all boxes. My opinion is there was a problem created, not thought through, but now they're fixing it, so that's the right thing to do. And hopefully after that we should be through, because the stage one talks about some 250, 300 new validators, which is not 100% decent, but quite ahead. And then there is more. And I think by the next time we speak about all of this, Serge, we'll be talking about eigenlayer being the centralizing force. This never ends because someone becomes more successful.
What if we play? Let's and again, every the listeners know I like to play devil's advocate a little. Let's dig the rabbit hole a little bit. Lido aside here, the case. Let's abstract from the case itself and from Lido, and I mean in general, it's an interesting thing because I have been around the space for a while, and I have seen different occasions. For example, let's pick a little bit and point fingers. You have the story of Juno. I'm not sure how you're familiar with in Cosmos. There was a big thing where they decided that one of the whale accounts gained the airdrop, and the governance voted to actually take the tokens of that account. And then there was the whole argument. The chain has the right to defend itself. That's why the consensus is there. At the same time, that's not a very decentralized thing to do. So, it's kind of like in the same level of story, where we have okay, we have an entity with a big amount of stake. Again, forget the names here for a second, regardless of that. Question is to you personally, do you think on the spectrum of decentralization, centralization of the Web3 world we are building or supposed to be building, what is the correct way here to act is the correct way for the chain to say, yeah, okay, we need to anything to defend ourselves, or we have to keep the decentralized balance, and there is some things we will never do no matter what. What's your opinion on this?
That's a hard one, but I think I'll fall a little close to what exactly the Ethereum Foundation is doing. Um, so if you look at what Ethereum Foundation is doing, right, it's trying to enforce decentralization, or rather bring in more decentralization by bringing in more innovative solutions, encouraging at least. Um, so there's one simple example. Like I know we're trying to extract it from use cases, but let's take one for better understanding. Every time you tune into any conversation that happens between Sriram from Eigen and Justin from the Ethereum Foundation, you see that natural tension of where Justin is not comfortable where Eigen is taking the whole ecosystem. Uh, Justin knows that yes, this is going to lead to another some sort of a Lido ecosystem if not fixed. But all credit to those guys. Uh, they're not stopping that ecosystem. Eigen is not yet launched, right? They could have done anything to pull the plug on it, and at least before the deposit contracts went live and you have the 6 billion worth of TVL locked in, they had the chance to pull the plug. They didn't. Rather, they have been constantly looking at what can help solve the challenge. I kind of like that approach. Innovation, I mean, we all have to agree this is work in progress. Like Web3 is work in progress. So that means there will be certain situations that will pop up that you have not imagined. And then how you act is important. And if you stop the gravy train, if you pull the brakes on it, then people don't trust you. And we've seen some of these examples. Again, we're trying to abstract away. So we've seen some of these examples where if foundations act rashly, um, no one's going to trust the trustlessness of the layer.
It's a, I mean, the reason I think I'm asking these questions is I kind of pivoted from your story straight into questions. There was a point there, but one of the reasons is I think, and I always say this to guests before we start recording, the same thing I said to you, the star of the star of the show is the guest, and in the sense of the person, not the project. And what I'm trying to connect the dots here, the way I'm trying to connect is some of the questions I'm asking, I guess, a little bit philosophical, right? And they're a little bit about values and all that. But it's an interesting point to ask validators and people who contribute directly into the Web3 space. Why? What are you like? What are your goals? What are your ethical beliefs? What are your values? Because I think a lot of the time, kind of we miss on that sometimes, right? And we try to build. And I totally agree with you that Web3 is a huge experiment, and it's great, to hear more and more people coming to acceptance of that. That it's not something that needs to be expected of, at least in my opinion. But here's the question, to you, with all of that in mind, back to your kind of story of Nimit and Girnaar, so the story that you were saying, of you had a seed round and you had fundraising and and a startup story, that led you eventually to the place where you are today. What's the goal though? What's the, like, the greater not end point, of course, right? It's not an interview where you're going to be in 5 years time, but where are you guys heading? What is the mission, so to speak?
Right. So, and I don't think our goal is too different from anyone who is truly in Web3. It is decentralization. And that's the reason why when you asked me this question, that I erred on the point of saying, when you create something and it's supposed to be decentralized, you never know what shape and form it will take. You got to let it fly, and even if it's against what you imagine it to be. And that's the reason why I go back to the same example. The Ethereum Foundation just did that. It's only once in the history that they pulled the plug where the entire fork happened to save a few users. I'm not in favor of that. And that's exactly the kind of stuff that the centralized institutions pull on us, which is what we all stand against, right? Centralized institutions are great to protect people who don't understand stuff. But is the best way to control their choices? Probably not. The best way is to educate the user. Yes, you can't educate in every single small choice, but on the core things that matter to people, you got to educate, and you literally let people decide for themselves. So we also stand for the same value set. Essentially, that's what brought us. So the story was supposed to be a funny story, but the core reason why we continue to stay after coming in uh, the funding story, right? We could have continued building the Web2 world with that money and left with it. It's because when we came in here, we realized that the best thing that we ever thought was getting built, which was the world's first decentralized computer. And that kept us in. And that's essentially what's been our value set. And that's exactly where you see us, right? If you look at all the networks that we validate on, it's all very close to EVM. We genuinely believe that the decentralized nature of compute power essentially and the decentralized nature of trust is essentially what's the base layer on which everything else should be built. And that's the goal. And when it comes to specifically Girnaar, what our goal would be, we would want to take and extend the decentralization to stuff that we do, which is infrastructure and validation. And that's what we're trying to work towards. So one of the next things that we're trying or playing around with is to, well, some of that is already done, but we want to do it something differently. We want to build a little bit of decentralized validator network. Uh, and that's, again, in the same theme and thesis that we want to decentralize stuff. And one of the big drivers for that is that if you look at the entities that are the most centralized, unfortunately, right now in Web3, if you take out the home stakers, it's all validators, right? And you have validators now being as big as VCs, funding and deciding which projects should thrive and which should get killed. Unfortunate direction of what's happened, but that's exactly what we're going to pull away from. Lido is doing that by introducing community staking. We want to do it by bringing direct um, community-driven validators to the ecosystem, and that's what we're working on, mate, right now.
It's interesting, you say something that has been a goal, part of my goal, regardless of before the rebranding of the project, because we were called Citizen Cosmos, and then we changed to Citizen Web3 half a year ago, something like that. We were trying to do it for a while. We've been covering other ecosystems for a while, but one of the goals has been exactly what you say, is the understanding that, we are a validator ourselves, validate more than 15 networks today. And we also moving to bare metal. We also try to participate, it's the same goals. And it's interesting that, the understanding that validators play and even a bigger role than DCs, I think, play on the stock market, in a sense, not the stock market, but the startup market. Sorry, because validators are people who were there, and who were successful, who were there and were successful during either the bull run of 2013, 14, or 16, 17. And since then we've seen all of the projects, and this is the question: what are you guys doing? Because at the peak of the market, you see certain validators, Stakefish, P2P, you take the big names, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of commissions per day. And it's interesting to understand. It's interesting that you mentioned the validator network. I had several validators on the show over the last several years. It's an interesting topic that I would like to ask you something about. There has been actually, we are, as a validator, we try to experimentally buy a stake in every validator DAO that exists. If I hear a validator DAO, Citizen, we go and we put $50 or whatever, just to have every DAO validator stake around the world. But anyways, the point is that they all try different methods, approaches of decentralizing this centralized entity called the validator. Some by building DAOs on top of them and then giving them some voting powers. Some go as far as saying that the tokens are like shares, blah blah blah, whatever, and then even they have to they measure the commits to GitHub, and then there are different systems. It seems that today, to me at least, it seems that today, as much as I would love it to be happen, it seems that the tools are not yet there to create a decentralized validator. What's your approach here, and what are you planning to do? What's the structure? How will it look, a decentralized validator network, or just a decentralized validator?
It's funny that you asked me this. So I'll be honest, right? Right now we haven't firmed it up completely in our heads. But here are the two, three things I'm thinking about, right? The first thing that we have learned is that there is a difference, which is very well something that's come out in the open because of liquid staking. There's a difference between the kind of people that are there. There are those who have the capital, who still want to be a validator. There are those who have the tech know-how. A large part of the current networks essentially assume they're the same people, right? So most people would think about that, if you're a validator, and you want to be part of the validator DAO, they don't distinguish their role, and which is the reason why the success is limited. I think that's one thing we're building on. How will we do it? We'll of course release a lot more information in the coming time to come. We'll love the community to kind of give us feedback. But we want to kind of play that um, very clearly out there. It's not necessary that if you have to be a part of this network, you actually have to bring both. Which is very rarely that people are both. But you both of them get a say. You essentially one can't override the other. The capital can't override the tech can't override the capital, and that's important. Um, the second thing I think that's interesting that you mentioned, right? People are trying to find some different sorts of proxies to the commitment. I think for us, we are just finding a simple proxy to the commitment is that how much of effort is going in growing the network. Now, GitHub commits, etc., is one, but because this validation is essentially two things, right? Infrastructure and the capital. So these are the two proxies that we measure it on, right? So if you can bring infrastructure, you can run it right, and we're figuring out the performance metrics around that front. That's essentially what we measure and kind of go to as contribution rewarding the behavior. And even if you don't have the capital, you can source the capital, which means that you can get commitments to the tokens of the project. That gets rewarded too, because that creates a very nice flywheel effect, right? Staking is the only thing that is one of the few things that has a positive flywheel effect in the ecosystem. So those are the broad guidelines we're trying to build on. How would exact structure look, Chief? I'll just say, just wait a little while. We'll come up with something, and then we'll love to hear. We'll just sit back and we'll just love to hear feedback on, does that make sense? What tweaks? As I said, a decentralization, let it go in the world, and we'll learn.
You mentioned capital. Let's stick to capital. I understand that you still guys are designing, and of course, ironically, we've been building a tool for validators, and it's a multi-chain validator explorer that is validator centric, not network centric, not token centric. It's a validator centric explorer, and I'm curious because you mentioned capital. How can a validator, in your opinion, increase the revenue stream for their token holders? And I'm talking within the centralized boundaries, without, saying, oh, we are using your stake to invest into Apple stocks, and then we return you a packet of 6.2% bonus in the end of the century, whatever. No, not, is there a way today, in your opinion, apart from, of course, printing an own token and giving, extra staking rewards, are there ways for validators today to introduce any additional revenue streams, and so capital by such matters to their stakers?
I think you're coming very close to what we're thinking, right? So the short answer is yes. There's a ton of services that validators can provide on top, because there are two natural synergies. One is these are tech folks who can build stuff on top. Second is they're already running the infrastructure. Let me take some very few examples, right? RPCs, high quality decentralized RPCs for each of the blockchain networks, effectively right now run by centralized institutions. And a lot of revenue actually gets built there. These are dollar revenues, they're not token revenues that goes there, right? Which projects pay, which users pay for. Um, there's no reason why validators should not be running them, because essentially is referring to the same network, and the RPC provider is pretty much running just a node. Yes, they're doing a fairly good job, not to take credit away from them, but that's something that we can of course decentralize and bring it as an add-on from the validator. So that's one example. There are tons more where validators get more actively organized, think through better, and build the tech. Um, and as a structure, if that's what gets accepted, then there's a lot more of economic benefit that can be passed around, both to the consumers as well as to the validators themselves, which are suddenly being captured outside of the ecosystem by centralized entities. It was probably necessary some time back when everybody couldn't do it, but there's no reason why it can't be done now.
It's a tricky topic, measuring revenue. I try to, with the tool that we're building, we're trying to understand, whether some validators who print tokens, for example, own tokens on top of any network, doesn't matter what is the underlying layer there, of the contract, and then say, okay, so apart from the stake and rewards that you're getting, you're also getting like those loyalty points or whatever, and then some validators go, okay, now we have merchandise and we sell that merchandise for those. In a sense, that's kind of like, but it's there, and we're trying to think how to measure it because uh, to show the point I'm trying to get it here is I think that it's interesting to see like with liquid staking, of course, which introduced a huge regardless of what we think of it, whether it's bad, good, like not the point of not the economical, I guess, point now, but it introduced something very new to capital that wasn't moving. I think that was what I was trying to get at. Do you think that there is more such examples as liquid staking, which was introduced to many networks over the last 6-7 months, year, let's say, something that will come that will be like liquid staking, but from a validator to their delegator, let's say, not necessarily liquid staking, but I don't know, printing bonds because you're staking tokens to me and you go with these bonds to, I don't know, to this market, borrow capital, blah, 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 whatever. I mean, is that realistic or is that like trying to build a useless chain of DeFi here in the speculation in my head?
Well, that's for the market to decide. But I think what you already were speaking of has already been done. So there's this project, and I'm sure you probably have come across it. There's a project called Tenderize. Very good folks. Do check them out. We love them. We are one of the early backers there. They've done validated specific LST, liquid staking, which then, and they've done it on a few projects right now. It's Polygon is one of them, and that's the reason we know them closely enough. Now, um, yeah, the jury is still out there whether it's something that's absolutely useless and it's over engineering, as people call it, to finance, or it's actually required. But the fact is they're growing, man, and they're growing crazy. They're the fastest growing protocol on DeFi Llama in their category, oh sorry, in the chains. So there is demand for it, uh, and there is all this revenue, exactly right, which is getting leaked out. I was still happy that some of this revenue gets leaked to decentralized protocols like Lido, but I'm super not happy about all of this getting leaked to centralized institutions, and we won't name them, but the RPC providers, all of those guys, right? Effectively, just running nodes, man, but doing a much better job at marketing. But Web3 is not about marketing; it's about community, and the decentralized way is the right way to do it.
Before I'm going to ask you a question about community, which I definitely want to ask you, I want to ask you, what's your opinion, or I mean, it's not going to be a statement or a question, but one, I guess, large topic for validators and, in terms of decentralization, is bare metal and cloud infrastructure. And of course, different network requirements are to be considered when this question is asked, and of course different specifics of wherever this validator is physically, or the team is physically based, I don't know, the weather conditions and so on and so forth. We can talk forever about I mean, we had a guy on who was saying, I mean, he was like, I would love to do bare metal, but I'm having 3-4 storms per year and I have electricity cuts out every, like, I cannot. It's physically, to build that type of a generator physically for me would not be feasible. So a question to you, what do you think? Do you think that, there's two extremes, and there's of course the opinion in between. One extreme, validator nodes should be outside of centralized centers, sorry, and only run from home, from mobile phones, whatever. And then we have the opinion, okay, but liveliness is important. We need the quicker ping, quicker connection, so we need to be, the nodes need liveliness has to be the highest we can get. So, only cloud can provide it, or it doesn't matter in your opinion. What's your opinion here? Where is your take on this?
I think it goes back to values, right? Our values are very idealistic. We believe that it should be individual devices that are always connected, but we also are realistic in believing that it's a journey. And I kind of echo Vitalik's sentiment that it eventually wanted to be mobile, but doesn't start there. And it's not something that we just say. If you look at our journey, right, we started on cloud. You exactly heard where we started with those cloud credits. Um, and just in about in a month, we'll be in a data center. So we just almost finished the migration, and that's a local data center. And then we want to have like, so this is not renting out bare metal. This is actually our own physical rack that we have configured our network. Sometimes it kind of, I don't know if you've seen the startup, which was the series, the Silicon Valley, I think that's called. And you know the character of Guilfoyle sometimes gives me that feeling. But that's too extreme for everybody to run. And we kind of feeling the pressure for it, but we like that journey. We think that's where it should be, completely more in your control. And we know that over a period of time, as networks ramp up, mobile networks become more reliable, devices become much more reliable, less centralized, because devices also are centralized today. You will basically see a move, but it's not going to happen overnight, right? So let's be realistic. But in the process of being realistic, let's not leave the ideal goal. So it's a journey, man. It's not a one zero answer. We got to get there, and we got to keep taking steps towards that direction. At the end of the day, if in 10 years validators still continue to run on AWS, GCP, and Azure, it's probably not the world I signed up for, man.
It's something I totally can relate to. I mean, the amount of projects in 2016, 17 that came out on ICO with the promise of, building a cloud, decentralized cloud. And I'm not talking about the 2020, 21 projects. I'm talking about the 16, 17 projects. And I don't recall any of them succeeding in doing such, unfortunately. But there are good movements. No, there were some good movements. I've seen a lot of projects these days trying to, to create some decentralized cloud solutions. And have you actually, personally, do you think there are any technologies, not necessarily projects, in terms of decentralized cloud that you've seen on the market that you would potentially, to anybody researching this question, would recommend looking at?
Honestly, I've started giving up on going too deep right now, man. There's so much noise. But I think back in the day, the one I really liked was Helium. I don't know why they kind of, they had the right architecture at least in place. Uh, yeah, but I don't know.
Napster.
Yeah,
You know that,
exactly.
right? It's the same
Yeah,
guy, right? You
yeah.
know that.
Unfortunately, it's the jinx, man. I don't know what it's the too early a mover. Let's not call it first mover. Too early a mover jinx, maybe.
Yes, there are. Because we're also involved with bare metal and like own bare metal, also like with our own racks and everything. And we try to be involved in. Lately, we got involved in some projects with like deep in projects, like such as Helium. And it's interesting the amount of like little antennas and stuff that you have to go into and all that, and sometimes build yourself. But anyways, sorry, going off track. But one, I think, not final thing, but like to go, I do want to ask you about the community as well. But just before that, you mentioned a lot, values. You mentioned a lot education, and what's it seems that the story, like you say, it wasn't easy. It wasn't like a one-day story, like you say. It wasn't something that was just happened over there. And you guys obviously have a direction in which you're going. But if you were to look at all this now today, and to kind of, what was your biggest challenge that you found in terms of trying to get the validator to have a community, to actually, for the infrastructure, like you say, you went from cloud to having your own rack rented, which is, I understand the process. It sounds like it's going from cloud to having a rented rack. No, it's a huge process, which requires a lot of planning, a lot of equipment, a lot of technical, work. So I understand that it wasn't probably an easy way. And in all of that journey, regardless of whether it was the software, the hardware, the people, the community, what is the biggest challenge that you encountered? And if there was somebody else listening to this wanting to start a validator, what would you say to them then, considering the challenge that pay attention to this, or pay attention to that, or I don't know, don't do this, do that?
Gosh, there's so many. I don't know where to start. Okay, let me start. I'm going to flip the question, man. I'm sorry, but I'm going to flip the question and let me talk about
Please.
first not the challenges, but what really helped solve a lot of those challenges, right? I mean, and it goes back to the same thing that we're going into community. Um, we wouldn't have been here without the community, and that's what we love of this space. That's why decentralization too. I'm going to give a shout out to some of these very special guys um, who helped us when we knew nothing about validation, we knew nothing about running this kind of infrastructure, because we were application guys. We were not infra guys when we started. We wanted to be there because we loved what it was solving for. That's exactly where blockchain was when we started. Web3 was. It is still a little bit more infra. It's just getting into apps. Um, but everyone from the community rallied around us, including what people in the regular world call competitors. So a special mention to my friend at Stakepool. Um, he was a competitor, man. And he taught me essentially how to run my machines. The team at Polygon, amazingly helpful. All of these guys, and there are so many names I can mention, but effectively, that's what helps solve most of it. So I think the challenge is largely mindset. Whoever's kind of coming into this ecosystem, who thinks 0-1 games, not infinite sum games, right? That's what you got to fix first. Unfortunately, I don't know about you, but a large part of us grew up in that kind of mindset. Um, and that's not Web3. Web3 is infinite sum. And if you go in with the wrong mindset of saying that, hey, I'm going to be guarded, I'm not going to, you got to put your guards down. You got to think about how you're going to take the whole network together, and then you thrive. Then most of the challenges get solved for. So for me, the big learning was mindset. Probably tells people I'm old, largely older than most people in the community. Uh, but yeah, man, I came from the Web2 startup world, a dog eat dog world. I did finance. I'm a CFA by training. There's a lot of unlearning that had to happen to get here. But now I'm super happy that I'm here. I just can't see myself anywhere else.
It's interesting. I've seen, I think, over the last, like, I don't know, 10, 11, 12 years in this industry, a lot of younger people who come, and it's actually not that different, from the old world. I'm going to use some quotations here. In terms of, it's like, if you put a really experienced waiter in a restaurant, but, let's say he worked all his life, I don't know, in restaurants in Soviet Union, and then you take him to I don't know, a restaurant in Europe, and you put him there because he has 10 years experience, but all his experience isn't going to mean shit, because it's better. And in this industry, what I was trying to say, and all of these people, like young people who also came in without experience today, are top end blockchain developers, and the reason they are is because they didn't have all that luggage which we have. I'm also a little bit, I guess, older than I look, but yeah, but and I totally agree. I totally understand. But but you kind of shifted this to the community already, and I want to ask that because it's a huge topic for validators, because obviously without the community, validators wouldn't exist. Number one reason, they wouldn't have delegations. So they wouldn't have delegations, they wouldn't have revenue, they wouldn't have revenue, they wouldn't have the ability to provide either public goods or any and pay for the infrastructure and so on. So regardless of the material question in the head, or not material, how I'm gonna go very, very, very abstract here, but not abstract, but very vague. Sorry.
Mhm.
How does a validator build the community? It's like this, just like poof, big question. Like no, no, no.
So yeah, so I think that's actually it's not abstract. It's a very pointed question. Um, Contribution is the short answer to it. So I think a lot of us think that Valid has a single rule of running infrastructure. Actually, that's where it starts. It doesn't end there. It starts from running infrastructure, then goes towards participating in governance, then goes towards building more tools for the network that you're validating on, then goes towards actually trying to think more about the challenges the network is facing to bring adoption. And the more you kind of, and that's a thought process, because when you go down the thought process, you're actually building stuff along the way that will help the network. And then you're cross feeding, because the network will actually push you. I'll give you a few examples directly for people to understand this, right? When we started off, we were struggling to get delegations. And the first thing the Polygon team said that, hey, you know what? Do you want to try out the new guys who are coming on the block? I said, okay, sure. What does that mean? It's like, hey, Lido's coming on Polygon. but the way they're doing it is a little different because it's just starting out. Um, take a shot if you're comfortable getting on board. And actually, it was a big risk because Lido, when it started out on Polygon, the way the smart contracts were written, they wanted us to deposit a validated NFT. For the folks who don't know Polygon enough, Polygon is one of the very few left walled gardens. It's changing soon, where first come first serve. It's not the active 100, right? It is the 100 that are gotten or 105 that are gotten are the validators. So giving up the NFT was a big deal. But that's where it started. And then we learned. And then we started supporting each new project that came on Polygon, helped vet it, kind of go through the process. Then we started learning, getting more active in governance. We started building tools on Polygon. We are now building a dashboard that helps people understand the economic incentives better. And we realized that it's a good time to do it because Polygon 2.0 is coming around, and it's becoming a hypertoken with more kind of chains that you can validate on. So, I mean, that's chain specific conversation, but there is so much you can do, right? We are part of the test net. We run the test net for free, but then that's what brings more delegations because we are the first guys who go out there and tell people, hey, this is the bug that we found. And then you release, do it, don't do it. This is how we kind of solve for it. So they created a small subcommittee, and you just keep contributing, man. You keep contributing. You keep getting more actively involved in conversations. Um, and that's what the people are looking for. People looking for contribution, man. Who you are, just to know you better as people, and then what you're doing to help the network and community go forward. Because the beauty of Web3 is that you all in the same thing. Ultimately, we are getting rewarded in the same token. The user is holding the same token. So the user does understand that. The delegator does understand that is there something that you're contributing to bring the token become more economically um, attractive by taking the project forward, the community forward, the network forward. You do that, things start falling in pace, you get in touch with more people, the wheels start spinning.
This is a big question, the wheel spinning. I mean, you say it obviously with experience, but to some it might sound. I'm gonna like take a the other side of the conversation to be able to have that conversation here. I'm totally understanding and I following what you're saying, but I want to dig into the subject a little bit here because I've been asked numerous times. I've run nodes since 2016 on Beecher's types protocols, witness nodes, and it was very different. But since then, to say that I know how to run a validator better than somebody else, bullshit. I don't. I mean, we're not running a big validator. Our validator is quite small. We're concentrated on certain networks, and then we try to contribute. But anyways, point being is, the question that I got asked the most so far, it's about that wheel starting to spin, because validators come and they say, okay, I'm contributing. I've either built tools or I've either shown the foundation that we are capable of, I don't know, creating a dashboard, an explorer, providing extra RPC points or anything else. I don't know, whatever. The foundation either provides them some initial delegation or regardless, but that's it. And then they get stuck and then they're like, but what do I do next? How do I get that wheel to start to spin? Like, because you said it so like, and then the wheel starts spinning, but how does it start spinning? Where, where is, where's the leverage? Because one thing, sorry for such a long question, but one thing is to prove to the foundation that, hey, I'm contributing. Here is the dashboard. Here's the explorer. Here is the GitHub link. Blah blah blah. Whatever. Another thing is to show this to retail. Another thing is to show this to stakers that, hey, we are a validator who contributes. We're a validator who have built explorers, and those explorers, the delegators might not even like that explorer. They might say, hey, your explorer is shit. We don't understand your UI. We don't even understand why the foundation is giving you money for it, which is sometimes the case. So I'm sorry for such a long and like a question, but what does a validator to do at this point? How does he prove to the community that he's important?
So I don't claim to know the entire answer to this question. I'm still learning. Of course, we are not the large guys yet. Um, but I think it's a factor of three things. One is, of course, a large factor is timing, like anything else in life. Uh, a lot of validators who kind of come in right now, they're trying to crack into more established networks. Now, if I had to go and say that I have to crack into Solana, by the way, we're not there. The amount of effort it's already built, right? What am I going to do there? What am I going to contribute? Another third dashboard? No one cares for the third dashboard. Um, so you got to take bets early. And I can see you laughing there, but you got to take some bets early, man. So it's a lot about timing too. And look, you are there because you were there from the time when no one believed in the ecosystem. Like 2016 was really early. You stuck around, so that's how you get rewarded. Does that mean the boat has sailed? No, there's so much more getting built. Just go and find some of those opportunities, but don't hope to get rewarded soon, because back in 2016 all these coins were shit. I mean, there's no value. Probably were just managing to keep your pants on by paying those bills, but you stuck around, right? And now the time for reward has come. So timing and patience is something that people underrate. Validator business is not it's not the farmer business. You're not farming tokens, man. It's not a bull run case. It's a long term play. If you're in here, you're in for the good. Yeah, that exactly right. So don't take that short term view, and that's the first thing to go for. Uh, and I think the second thing is a large part of the validators I see do never get out there. Um, they build a ton of shit, but they don't talk about it, and this is unfortunate. Maybe it's persona. Maybe just we've been lucky that I've been out there in the world a little longer before getting into this business, so we do talk, maybe not enough, but I think that's one thing that people miss out on. It's as much important to engage in conversations as it is to build stuff. Most validators don't end up doing it. Some networks have really done a good job at doing it. Again, I'll take the example of Polygon. They've done the Spotlight series. Some have actually done much better jobs. We are also trying to see if we can bring some of those conversations alive through some of the dashboards that we're bringing. But yes, there is some distance to be done where validators probably need to take a little bit more effort, but networks also really need to push conversations between the community and validators. A lot of work to be done there. A lot of work to be done. But that's one
What
piece.
about sorry for the interruption, but I agree, man. That lack of that gap of having to not having to, but in a sense it is having to, because when you run big infrastructure and when you run you have people working, you do have to go and try to sell yourself, and finding that gap between trying to provide the public goods and trying to be part of that economy, or well, literally, of building the digital nation that you're supporting with your infrastructure, whichever one you believe in, or the several, that gap is hard. But that's the validator point of view. What about the stakers? What about the other question? How do they find the right validator? Because today there is, in a sense, somewhat bigger, because maybe it's not bigger because, but it is, because validators at the end, like we said, are centralized entities who come and go, and they will come and go. But the damage that can be done by the wrong validator attracting the wrong part of the network, or whatever, and then, like we said, go and build an atomic bomb with those revenue or whatever they do. So how do stakers? So anyways, the question is basically the same but reversed. How do you, in opinion, how does a staker today should find the right validator? What do they do?
Uh, I think I know the answer, but I'm not able to figure out the incentive to act upon it. So I'll tell you what the answer is, right? The answer is, of course, more research. Um, Stakers put a lot of energy, effort in figuring out which projects do they want to back. That's the token that they buy. I think beyond that, they stop. They don't figure out what's the best next best thing to do with the token, right? And as a result of which, despite that, you see a lot of networks being understaked. When I say understaked, Ethereum has 16% stake. Come on, man. I mean, Polygon at 35, 38% stake. If you are believing the project, and a lot of these are long-term holders, by the way, they still don't kind of go in and stake, which is the what people call the risk-free return of stake. Um, so if they're not willing to research what to do with their token, I'm trying to figure out what's the incentive for them to research who do they park it with. But the answer is research, and maybe we can actually do a very long. I mean, we can keep going on and on about this, but there has to be maybe it's about making it easy for them to actually do the research without having to go deep in discords and have to go deep in snapshot to figure out who participates in what governance. It's too hard for them currently. We're trying to build a dashboard that makes it a little bit easier, but I think it's still miles to go. Um, but yeah, man, I think research to figure out who they connect with, who they just this literally the decentralized world. You're picking. people that you connect with, you vibe with. But no one does that. Or very few people actually do it.
It's the same community question, it's like one on one type, how do I build a community? On the other hand, what community do I want to join? It's like I have now suddenly the freedom of joining any community. That community is not like, it's not a kindergarten, it's an economical community. And I don't mean that it's serious. I mean that it could give you incentives. It could suddenly feed you if you're in the right place, like you said, in the right time. Suddenly your $1,000 investment into, I don't know, XYZ chain as a staker turned out to be, I don't know, whatever. And then, yeah, that's what I'm saying. It is a community question. It's always like trying to find that balance between, I think, um, delegating to the right validator or is there such a thing as the right validator? I mean, because it's a decentralized world, right? So it's kind of like a never endless like topic, I think, to discuss with never endless possibilities of what's right or wrong,
There is right for you, right? I mean,
if it makes
there
sense,
is a right validator for you. It's just like
of
probably going in a
course.
relationship. I mean, is there the most beautiful person out there can be? Of course, there's beauty can be parameterized, but who do you vibe with is very individual. So in the same story goes, but it's very hard to find that in the Web3 world because it's hard to figure out how do you kind of even go in and have a conversation or maybe just figure out who this person is. Which is probably why I love this podcast, man. I think you guys are doing a great job
Yeah.
and trying to bring some of that persona out.
Well, we like I said, we're building also a tool, and hopefully we're going to soon release a demo, and it's hopefully will help people to narrow that gap between the research that. But let's see, we hope that more and more Valtes like as yourselves as well, who building other dashboards. We always look up to other teams and what they are doing, and then trying to learn from them. Nimit, let me jump from here quickly to the blitz, and it's gonna be like 5 questions. Um, so they're a bit random, but I hope that you stick with me. So give me one movie or song or book that has throughout your life has had a special place in your head, in your heart, in your influence on what you do.
Pursuit of happiness.
Okay. Okay. Good. That was easy. Okay. Um, give me one direct technological direction, such as, for example, machine learning, outside of the blockchain space that you are interested in.
It's probably cliched, but it's still AI. I think there's still a lot of work, and it's very interesting what's happening.
Okay. What about within the blockchain space? What
Deep in all the way,
technological
man.
advance?
Deep in all the way, getting it right.
Sorry.
Deep in all the way, getting it right.
Deepen. Sorry, I didn't hear. Sorry, deepen. Okay. I understand. I am. It's a big trend. It's hard to follow sometimes, I think. Though. What about, what about one blockchain project? But please don't say Ethereum, Polygon, Bitcoin, Cosmos, Polkadot. Something like outside of the scope of what the market hype, something not something you're suggesting for people to buy, but something that you have been following maybe for some time, a smaller project which you think
Oh, so unfortunately, it's got hyped now. I think all data availability solutions. Just because it got hyped, I'm not changing my answer there. Avail is definitely one that's close to heart. Again, comes from same ecosystem, but yeah, Avail, anything that's data availability, I think they're solving for one very massive problem statement. Making it really modular comes from there. Unfortunately, it's got hyped, so it doesn't stick to the answer format that you want me.
No. It's good. We are not here. It's not an exam. So two more last ones. This is the more abstract ones now.
Mhm.
So give me one motivational thing which keeps Nimit, building a decentralized future for humanity, waking up out of bed every day, and keeping validating, focusing on communities infrastructure. What keeps you going every day?
I got a 2-year-old daughter, and I want to make sure she lives in a world where she's not dictated her choices.
Yeah, that is very, very fucking good. That is, I amen to that. Really, 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 that is something that big topic for I think a lot of people today. Okay, um, last one. Um, you kind of just said it, but let's see if there's going to be a different one. Give me one person, dead, alive, human being, an alien, made up character, a coder, a writer, doesn't matter, that not a guru, because guru is a bit extreme, but somebody that has been throughout your life consistently, at least lately, helping you see a better future. I mean, you said your daughter already, but let's get a different one then.
It's a little different, but I'm a bit spiritual, and I do have a guru, and basically goes by the name of Nirvan Maharaj Sahib. This is very specific to, and in fact, just a little bit of backstory to folks. Girnar is named after a place which is a spiritual place in India. So look it up. Look it up. I think you get some really good insights, because life, of course, is beyond what you're building, right? And a large part of the mission Web3 is the same as the mission that they have. So a lot connects.
Okay. Okay. And to all the folks interested, please do look at the show notes, because there are going to be links, and we're going to link all of the stuff that Nimit has obviously mentioned. And you guys, folks, and guys and girls and everybody else can have a look for themselves and do the research on those things, because I'm also, it's not something that I'm familiar with, so I want to also research. Nimit, thank you very, very much for your time. Been a pleasure, and looking forward to see to the how the continuation of the decentralized network building will be folding out.
Awesome. And thank you so much for having me on board. And for everyone who's listening in, do check out the new dashboard that these is releasing, man. Everything in that direction. We love and we support.
Thank you. Please don't hang up just yet. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Thanks and goodbye.
This content was created by the Citizen Web3 Validator. You may support our work by delegating to any of our nodes.